When somebody's talking to you about climate change, how do you feel? Do you feel like this kind of like eerie feeling inside, this anxiousness, this bad feeling about what's going to happen in the future, thinking about the future, whether you should have kids, a family? How are we going to survive this when, politicians are not really working on this, business people aren't really working on this, or some people are, some people aren't, some people are doing the opposite? It must feel pretty crappy after a while. But imagine if you read something or watched something or did anything and it actually made you feel optimistic about climate change, especially about climate change adaptation. Just imagine if you read a book that gave you hope on climate change. Well, that's what we're going to be talking about on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I've got new author, Todd Medema on the podcast today. He's talking about his new book called How to Surf a Hurricane. Just imagine the thought of that, surfing a hurricane. How to Surf a Hurricane, it is this fictional book about, kind of a bit of a sci-fi book about someone who, it's a heist. It's in the Solarpunk novel type of genre. It's kind of cool. And it's out for pre-sale right now. So I want you to go out and get it. But we're going to hear from Todd about the book, the process of writing a book, especially looking at something that's not often the narrative that we hear, especially when it comes to climate change. So here we go. Let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin, and this is the podcast where you find out what's happening with the ocean, how you can speak up for the ocean, and what you can do to live for a better ocean by taking action. Today we're going to be talking about a book called How to Surf a Hurricane by Todd Medema. This is his first time writing a book. Well, first time going through a publisher. He wrote a novel in high school, but this one is really special. It's really about how to look at climate change in a very different way, an optimistic way. A lot of us don't really think about that. When we hear about climate change, a lot of doom and gloom associated with it. Sea level rise, you have sea surface temperature increases, ocean acidification, coral bleaching, flooding, droughts, wildfires, all that stuff makes it really difficult to think about climate change in a positive way, or to think about life in the future with climate change in a positive way. A lot of us get anxious about it. A lot of us, just feel really crappy. It kind of turns our stomach a little bit, especially when you see how people are dealing with it, how politicized it is. But we don't often hear about in our regular lives or in our fictional books or on a podcast or on a video where things are going to be fine. Things might actually turn out to be okay if we take it seriously, if we take actions. And, this book that Todd wrote is going to give you that optimism, is going to say, you know what? I think we'll be okay as long as we take action. And the book is going to inspire you to take action. In fact, you can go to the link below in the show notes or in the comments below if you're watching this on YouTube. You can go and you can say, hey, you know what? Here's a link to How to Protect the Ocean. Todd's got all these resources for you and strategies and tips on how you can get started protecting the ocean. I think this is where books need to go. I think this is how resources are built. They inspire and then they lead you and guide you towards action. It's what we're trying to build for a long time in a project, which I've probably already announced by now, but it's going to be amazing and you can take part. So this is a great interview. Todd's an amazing human being. He's already in the clean energy industry. He always wants to do something for climate change, like to reduce climate change, to help the planet, telling you to spend time for yourself in nature. And that's how we learn and get inspired to protect. This book is going to help you do that. I can't wait for you to hear the interview. So here's the interview with Todd Medema talking about his book, How to Surf a Hurricane. Enjoy the interview and I will talk to you after. Hey, Todd, welcome to the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Are you ready to talk about climate and the ocean?
Hey, Andrew. I am. Thanks for having me.
Love it. I love it. This is going to be a lot of fun because we're going to be talking, about climate change in the ocean, but in a little different way. A lot of times when we talk about climate change, it's the doom and gloom. It sucks. It's no fun. We get climate anxiety, we get overwhelmed, and we got to find a different way to be able to discuss this. And Todd, when you reached out to me to be like, hey, look, I wrote a book. In a sort of a fictional character way, but talking about climate change, talking about oceans in a much different way than the way we normally talk about it in society. And I want to discuss it on the podcast. And I was like, you know what? This is a perfect way to talk about different ways to discuss, climate change, just think about climate change. So I was like, yes, let's do it. We booked it. We're here. We're ready to talk about it. And I can't wait to do that. But Todd, before we do that, why don't you just let us know who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm Todd Medema. For the past several years, I've worked directly in clean energy, on solar and good energy storage. But really outside of that, I've become extremely passionate about climate change and how we tackle this. And I've tried to explore it and tackle it from many different lenses, not just from the technology side, but from the political side. I've like volunteered with Citizens Climate Lobby. I've liaised with senators from like the local volunteering side, running green groups, even from the personal lifestyle side, I've lived car free, cut meat out of my diet, and just really trying to understand what is this problem? What are our solutions? And how do we get there?
Yeah. I mean, that's the question, right? Those are the big questions we've been trying to solve for quite some time. Growing up in this type of world, in hearing climate change, it's been often discussed in terms of climate denial and everything. So as you grew up getting into the clean energy industry, why did you follow that path? Growing up, probably a lot of people, even maybe parents or aunts and uncles, or like in your family, or even friends and their parents and stuff, they may have talked in a different way of climate change, like it's not existing, or there's a lot of controversy around it politically. It comes into play. Like, how did you get steered into clean energy industry?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, because my family background is more the red state, like,
right. Okay.
questions about climate change. But I think what it really comes down to is, as a kid, I spent a lot of time in nature. I was a Boy Scout. We were hiking, camping, kayaking, you name it. And so I just really came to appreciate nature. And as I was exposed more and more to, like, hey, we're doing these things that are destroying nature, I was like, whoa, no, like, I want nature to be here, not just for me, but like for my friends, my family, my kids. I want to preserve this.
I love that. I mean, that's what we all want, right? It really comes down to just being in nature and spending time in nature. And so you follow a path of clean energy. So how did you, what was your role? Like, what did you do in that industry? Like, what was your title?
Yeah. So my title is a software product manager. So
Okay.
I help these clean energy companies develop software that helps them operate more efficiently, helps them design,
cool.
solar power plants that are cheaper for their customers, and just trying to drive down the cost of clean energy.
That's interesting, because that was a big problem when it first came out, right? Solar panels are too expensive, put on homes. It's almost like I'll never forget. Like, I've grown up in a very in a very a time where technology increased immensely, from getting up on the from getting up from the couch to have to turn the channel on the TV, to having like massive remotes that are like a foot long with like 30 buttons to demarcate the channels and stuff like that, then to go into like massive TVs where the backs were like deep, and then you get to flat screen TVs when they were super expensive, and all these new technologies were super expensive when they first came out. And I remember vividly when plasma TVs and flat TVs became super cheap. It almost felt like it was overnight. It's like when they figured out how to make them properly, and efficiently, right? Where they can mass produce them, where they're not $2,000 every time they come out. And like, if you look at them now, you can get like a 42-inch TV for what, like $300, $400, and great
crazy,
quality.
yeah.
It's insane, right? I feel like that, like the solar panels industry went through the same thing. Like, we had friends on the block that had solar panels back in the 80s, and they were huge, they were ugly. Now it's almost to the point, where certain companies have them as like tiles on your on your roof, so it just like looks seamless. So there's been a huge sort of change and shift in making them, and we don't really realize that software is a big part of that, into how to make those. It's all computerized, how to make it more efficiently. Was that a hard thing to do? Like, is that a hard thing to get into in terms of like a software engineer or software programmer?
I'm going to say it wasn't too hard for me, because it's something that I've always enjoyed. I actually got into it from video games.
Okay.
When I was a kid, I loved playing video games. And then my best friend in elementary school actually was like, hey, did you know you can program your own video games?
Nice.
I was like, what? So I just like taught myself how to make, honestly, they were quite terrible games. I didn't know how to design games at that point, but and sometimes I get people asking like, oh, it's the tech industry. Like, I'm not a software engineer. There's nothing I can do to help. But like, there's so many different angles that we're tackling this problem from. And really, what I've seen is like every skill set is useful.
Yes.
Like if you love talking with people, if you love doing detail work, if you love like being out in nature, like there are people who go out and like install these solar panels. So like if you don't want a desk job, you can help the clean energy revolution in nature. It's fantastic.
Yeah. It's a problem that needs to be solved by everybody and every skill set, right? And I think it's just a matter of literally plugging into the problem and the solutions and understanding how to get there and how your skill set can go. It's really interesting because I have a lot of people who come in and like, I want to protect the ocean. I got to become a marine biologist. I'm like, no, please don't. We have so many. There's so many up and coming marine biologists. Like, please, like, what's your skill set? Oh, I'm in business, or I'm a banker, or I'm this. I'm like, use it. Use that like that skill set. Use that experience to like, let's look at funding models. Let's look at, ways to program software, ways to program, ways to make better and more efficient, like make solar panels better and more efficient. Like, there's so many different ways. I interviewed someone who was putting like solar panels on boats, like there's like they put them in on sailboats and stuff and like into the boat. And you're just like, this is amazing. Like to even come up with that idea, you need problem solvers, right? And that could become in any kind of format. Obviously, developers and software engineers, like you guys are really good at that because that's the skill set that you bring, the value that you bring. But there are other people who like business people who are like have skill sets that are problem solvers, and they just do it in different ways. And I think we need that. And you have done it in a lot of different ways, which we're going to talk about in a minute, but it's really cool to see that. So as you're in this, the clean energy industry, you're doing these software models and you're coming up with these programs. Where do you go from there? Like, okay, this is like, how come you just didn't be like, this is my thing? Like, this is great, I'm going to just continue this. Or did you find like something else that interested you as you were growing through that industry?
Yeah. I mean, I love doing multiple things. I have a hard time sitting still.
Gotcha.
So I'm still in clean energy doing the software product management.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I've always asked myself, like, what are ways that we can move the needle on this? And actually, the reason I started writing this book about 2 years ago was this. Someone shared a stat with me that humans are like, I don't know, something crazy, like 30 times more likely to remember a story than a piece, like a statistic. Because we are such story-driven creatures.
Yeah.
And so, I really got to thinking, like, are we communicating about climate change wrong? Is that, are we shooting ourselves in the foot? Because we're just like, numbers. Yeah. And everyone's like, what do these numbers even mean? And I don't know, like the same day, it's kind of one of those, funny coincidences. Someone else sent me this idea of like, in climate, we have these 3-story archetypes. Either the tech billionaire genius will save us all, the future generation, the kids will save us all, or the future is going to be a unrelenting hellscape that we deserved. And I'm like, you know what? You're totally right. I see one of those 3 archetypes in basically every story, and we need something else.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's so true. But there is another one. I feel like there's the science I told you so. You get that a lot in like apocalyptic movies, right? Where you have like the geologist or the marine biologist who's just like, I told you shouldn't have messed with that. And then everybody ignores that person, and then all hell breaks loose and they have to help solve it.
Yeah, that's kind of that third one of like, we were warned and like the future's gonna suck.
Yeah, exactly.
And in some ways it makes sense. Like, listen to your elders, listen to your scientists, like they're telling you.
For sure.
But I think also like one of the things that's just really missing is like, if you're not a tech billionaire, if you're not like a teenager, there's no other stories about like how you as just like an ordinary,
so true,
more like middle-aged person help contribute in your lifetime. Like so many of these stories take place in the far future. And I'm like, well, what about the next like 20, 30, 40 years? Like there's so little covering that.
I agree. I also think too, as you were mentioning that, I'm thinking like, we expect these heroes to come out and solve those problems, whether it be a tech billionaire, whether it be a teenager. And we've seen some of those come out and they get destroyed. You know what I mean? Like people will go after a 16-year-old girl or a number of 16-year-old girls and just tear her to pieces because they don't think she can, they don't think that she can do anything. Or like you have a tech billionaire who tries to come out with something. He's like, oh no, all these conspiracy theories come out. Like they're trying to control the weather. They're doing this, they're doing that. And then in a way, people look at that from the outside. It's like, well, I don't want to be in that position. Like I can't do anything because then I'm going to be called out for anything. Anything I say is going to be called out. And I don't want to be treated that way. And so it almost like repels you from doing it a little bit and just being like, no, I'm just going to stick in my thing. I'm going to, grab my plastic drink, or my drink that's in a plastic, single-use container. I'm just going to continue on my way. You know what I mean? And then it kind of suppresses us a little bit from doing it because we're like, oh no, I can't. That's going to destroy my career, destroy my life. I don't want to do that. Right? There's a lot of that. Yeah.
And so that's where like the third part of this puzzle came in. That like when it really clicked, like, okay, I'm going to write a book.
Yeah.
For a while, it's kind of like, oh, I'll just try writing some short stories. But like, okay, I'm going to write a book. I discovered this genre called Solarpunk. Have you heard of it?
Solarpunk.
Solarpunk.
Okay. No, I've never heard of that.
Okay. It's a pretty new budding genre. So,
okay.
It's not like classically defined because people are still figuring out what it means.
Yeah.
But it's kind of the opposite of cyberpunk. Like cyberpunk is dystopian future with like technology ruining everything.
Okay.
Solarpunk, in my mind, is a hopeful future where we as humans, as individuals and communities, work with nature to build a better future.
Yeah.
It's like, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And that tracks. I mean, you look at any conservation project that's succeeded, it's done as a community. It's done with the community. It's done in collaboration with that. It's not just done by one person who's like trying to hog all the attention. It's done as a community. So that makes sense as a book. Why do you think this is such a, like, why do you think it's only new now? Like, why do you think people are only coming out with it now, this type of genre?
I have two hypotheses. One is that fear sells.
Right.
Like,
true.
We are so biologically wired to be afraid of things that, like, if you just took the same story, like if you took iRobot and turned it into like robots are going to be just amazing and there's no problems at all, people like literally wouldn't believe it. They wouldn't buy it. Like, it's going to be a total flop at the.
There's no conflict. They need conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say the other one is like these stories. There's utopian fiction, but it's always so far off, right? Star Trek, like infinite free energy, universal basic income, etc. But it's like 400 years from now. But like, where Solarpunk really like means something as a genre is like kind of the next 100 years, like the messy middle where we're trying to figure out where hope is like a question rather than kind of a given in a distant utopia. And what I learned as I started writing this book and thinking about like, hey, am I going to publish this? How do I publish it? It turns out it's actually very hard to publish near future books like this because they're like instantly dated. They expire so quickly.
Right.
Gotcha. Any like predictions you make in your book, in 5 years they're going to turn out to be wrong. So your book has a very short shelf life.
Get it? I get it. Yeah. So now, so how do you? So this like Solarpunk type of novel, it expires quickly. So why do you think people are catching on to it now, like, or really enjoying it now? Is it just because it's so near future? People want to know what the near future is.
People want to know what the near future is, and I think it's also this rebellion against the oversaturation of fear and anxiety in our world.
Hence the punk part of it.
Yeah, people are just so desperate for tell me something besides the future's going to suck. And like when you really think about it, like the future is what we make of it. Yeah. And what we make of it is really informed by the stories that we read. So in a way, it's almost an act of creative rebellion to see like we're surrounded by fear. Everyone thinks the future's going to suck. But like, what if it does work out?
Yeah.
And like you share that idea with people and you're actually like helping to build that future through storytelling.
Right. And I mean, that's the beauty of it, is to kind of is to unlock that hope in you. I think hope is a very powerful way to do it, but you can still have conflict, but give hope in that way. Right.
Yeah. This, was probably the hardest part about writing this book was in a book about hope. What is the conflict?
Yeah. Yeah.
In a book that's not dystopian, why are so the book is a heist, right? And like
Right.
usually in a heist, it's like, why would someone participate in this like super dangerous illegal thing if there's like nothing going wrong in their life?
Mm-hmm.
So it was very interesting to navigate that and find something that was hopeful and yet
Yeah.
dangerous and exciting.
Yeah. So I want you to, as you kind of alluded to, but I want you to give us the without giving too much away. You know, we know it's a solar punk heist. Give us a little bit of a premise of what people can think about. Like what would be on the back of the book? What's going to be on the back of the book to give us like that lull to like, hey, I want to read this?
Yeah. So if you've ever asked the question of what our lives in our life climate change adaptation will look like,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to want to read this.
Okay.
And if you've ever written a climate book and just been like, dear God, this is boring, and you want
Yeah.
something that's actually fun to read,
Yeah.
this is first and foremost like high stakes, thrilling, page turning heist. So
Okay.
like if you want something enjoyable to read and where you just happen to like get some new ideas about our future, like check this out.
I love that. I'm gonna clip that. That's gonna be the commercial for this type of book. I think it's great, and you know, you want something that like you're on the edge of your seat as you're reading it. You know, it's you're following the story closely, but you're seeing. I assume what's happening is you're just seeing the world that they live in while they do this heist, right, and how they've adapted to climate change, almost in a way. And the way I'm thinking of it, remember the movie Demolition Man, you know, where it's in the
Mm-hmm.
future. I don't know, I forget how many years in the future. But like Sylvester Stallone, Wesley Snipes, they're in there. They've been frozen. They all of a sudden they're discovering this new future where they've adapted. You know, no violence, no this, no that, and then all of a sudden this is what they live in, and they're trying to change or they're trying to like stay true to themselves. It's a really interesting thing where I think the major restaurant, the nice restaurants were Taco Bell, I think, and it's, you know, very weird kind of way, but I think that's what it is. It's just like, here's the story that's happening. It's a heist. And then this is the world that they live in. So you kind of discover what a future, like a near future world of climate change is going to look like.
Yeah, and I was really intentional about, so it's an ensemble heist, right? There's a whole cast of characters, and
Gotcha.
each one of those characters has had a very different experience in the world
Okay.
of how climate change is affecting them and how they're adapting to it. So even as you just get to meet the characters, you're learning about other parts of the world, other challenges they're facing, how are they solving it, uh, you know, while
Yeah.
in a heist.
I love it. I love it. Now, you know, obviously this is in the future. We're not psychic. Where did you come up with some of the sort of the environments that that the reader's going to encounter in this book? How did you come up with it? Did you
Mhm.
try and look as what it would consider to be as accurate as possible?
Yeah, so that was one of my goals. My tagline for this book is basically The Martian meets Ocean 11 in a world adapting to climate change. So
Okay.
it has to be a fun heist
Yeah.
and, very accurate, very scientifically backed.
Right. Right.
Um, and so, yeah, I consulted with a lot of people. Just anytime that I wanted to pull something in, I would make sure to talk to an expert. How, how would this happen? How would you adapt?
Right. So when you write, like, is this your first novel?
Well, I did write one in high school, but this is going to be
Okay.
my first published novel.
Okay. Well, no, but that's important though, because it's not your first time going through the process. Maybe with an actual publisher, it's probably
Mhm.
different, I assume. When you set out to write this book, like, why did you decide this book? Like, obviously you had some experience, a little bit of experience in high school. What made you do a book and not like a podcast or, you know, like a YouTube channel or something like that? Like, what made you decide I'm going to write this book?
Well, when I started, I wasn't sure if I was going to publish it or not.
Okay.
I felt the creative need to write a book, and that's what felt accessible to me at the time. Um, it seems a bit more straightforward to put words on a page than to figure out all of
Hmm.
video editing, um, or even sound editing. Major
Yeah.
kudos to you on figuring all that out. Um, and so I just, I started writing it for fun, and then I hit like 50, 60, 70,000 words, and was like, oh, I made something, and like I kind of care about it, and I think it has a good message. Maybe I should like, take it
Like,
seriously and like hire an
yeah.
editor and like figure this
Yeah.
out.
I love it. I love it. Now, uh, to go through this process the first time, it's got to be a little challenging to figure out what you need. Obviously writing 50 to 70,000 words, you make it sound easy, my friend. Like, Todd, this is not an easy thing to do, but you love, I assume you love writing. So that's not hard for you to do, but the whole process, like to start out, where did you go? Like finding a publisher, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I will say it was hard in the sense of like you run into writer's block.
Yeah.
And you just have to keep writing. And so I ended up applying skills that I've used elsewhere in life to form successful habits of like, if there's a thing you want to do, make it as easy as possible and make it like a daily repeating thing so you don't have to think about it. So I was like home screen of my laptop, anytime I open it, first thing is the book.
Yeah.
And then setting like a day, like I'm going to write for 15 minutes a day. You know, if it's more than that, that's great. But like by setting that bar at 15 minutes, it felt more approachable. And I could be like, okay, like I don't even know what I'm going to write about, but I'll try writing for 15 minutes. And 90% of the time, it would turn into like a 2-hour marathon. Yeah.
Well, because I like that you kind of do it in a short spurt. It's like, look, I can do this. This is doable every day. Whatever's going on in your life, whatever you have to do. Obviously, you're working during this time. Like I assume you're still a full-time job. So doing it in little chunks in 15 minutes, that's great. And then all of a sudden, you're probably like, after 15 minutes, you're like, no, I'm on a roll here. I'm just going to keep going. Just going to keep rolling with this story idea or this line in the story. I'm going to keep going. Boom. All of a sudden, you're like 2 hours later, I've got 20,000 words. Okay. Cool. Like, I don't know if that's possible.
Not 20,000 words in 2 hours, but yeah.
No. But
exactly.
Like, you know what I mean? Like I've just written for 2 hours, got some ideas out of your head. You probably feel like after like 1 or 2 hours, you probably feel a little tired mentally, just from a little drained on that after doing that. Right.
Yeah. It was actually really interesting to see how the creative energy, it almost ended up being like physical energy, like you work out and then you're like tired. Yeah. Like to put forth that creativity, like the creative part of your brain is like, I need to take a nap, Yeah,
I get it.
I also,
sorry, go ahead.
It's kind of like a muscle in that sense of like,
yeah.
Then you can build the creative energy. You can build your endurance. You can write for like 2.5 hours, 3 hours. So I think that was like a helpful framework.
So how many hours do you think it took you to finish off this book? Like to write this whole book? If I had to calculate that number, it'd make me sad. But if I had to guess, I think by the time we publish it, I will probably have spent about 1,000 hours on it. Yeah. Crazy. 1,000 hours.
Like roughly 2 hours a day for 2 or 3 years. So yeah.
Jeez. And working at the same time. Like this is your hobby at this point, it's your hobby, right? Like, obviously you're getting it published and stuff, but you're doing this as an extracurricular activity, essentially.
Yeah. And in a way, I think it works well because, I think of like what I write in the book, and so much of it is informed by real life, where it'd be very hard to just do this in a vacuum chamber.
Gotcha.
But
yeah, for sure.
I'm constantly stealing things that I see in real life, and I think that makes the book a lot more interesting and a lot more realistic.
What barriers did you encounter while writing this book?
I would say rejection is a big one.
Okay.
And like, yeah. So last year when I started trying to send this out to publishers, where I kind of finished the first draft, I'd like run it past the first draft editor and was like, okay, I think I have something here. 40 emails out, 39 no's, and then 1 yes.
Okay.
And I could have stopped at 38 and been like, this is ridiculous. Like 38 people said no. But I'm stubborn, so.
Well, it worked, right? The stubbornness worked because you finally found that one. This is not abnormal, I assume, from the publishing industry. It's just they probably get pitched all the time. It's difficult. And you need to find that, I assume you need to find that one publisher that believes in the book, as it's written, and then saying, okay, I'm sure they're going to come with some suggestions and tweaks and stuff. Then they feel it's workable, right?
And it actually really helped me to understand other people's creative journeys and see that this is pretty common. I looked up stories from other authors, and like very frequently I was like, yeah, 95% rejection rate. But actually the one that really stuck in my mind is Lord of the Rings and Peter Jackson.
Okay.
I was a huge Lord of the Rings fan growing up, and I watched
Right.
like all of the behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And in one of the behind the scenes, he talks about how he had to take it to dozens of uh, movie houses before a single person bit. And like, I have no claim that my book is anywhere near as good as the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings movies.
You
But
never
just
know.
yes, if you believe it, you just have to keep pushing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. But like in that journey, like, did you have a lot of self-doubt after each, like, getting more and more rejections? Did you have that self-doubt?
Yeah, for sure. And then, not even just with the publishers, but like
Yeah.
after I got my publisher and then I started getting editor feedback,
Right.
sometimes I'd get the feedback and you'd be like, this is great, and you just need to tweak this. And I'd be like, cool, done. And sometimes it'd be like, wow, this like whole chapter, this whole character doesn't work. And it'd be like, but it's integral to the plot. If I get rid of them, I have to have the book.
And so how do you react to that when you get that reaction? And you're like, I don't really want to change that. Like, from a creative standpoint, this, like you said, this character is integral to the rest of the book. How do you react to that kind of stuff? Is it like an anger kind of thing, or more of like a desperation? Like, my book will change if I do this.
I would say it's a little sadness or despair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you invest your heart in a creative project, and so then when someone's like, this is garbage, you're like, but does that make me garbage?
Right.
This is me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the intimidation too of having to make those big changes. So eventually I found this sort of process where I would like read the feedback in a very detached manner and sit on it and actually start first applying this mental question of like, is this feedback I want to apply?
Right.
Because what I started realizing is in art, like once you get past the like basic stuff, like, are there typos? Like, is your grammar good? A lot of it really boils down to artistic choice.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. And subjectivity. And, I started getting like conflicting feedback of like, I like this character, I don't like this character. I'm like, well, can't please both of you. So like, I have to go back to what the story I want to tell is.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do because, you want your book to be a success, and you think like if someone gives you feedback, if you apply the feedback, it'll make it more successful. But
well, and especially with this genre, like you're looking at like Solarpunk, like a heist, right? This is very different than what many publishers probably see. You're trying to provide an optimistic look to climate change, very different than what the normal narrative is, or the traditional narrative is for climate change. Was that ever at risk of being changed through the editing process?
I'd say the high level idea was not. I was lucky enough to find a publisher and an editor that understood what I was trying to achieve. And I guess that makes sense because, they took it on. They obviously have to understand the project and want that project because they're getting pitched with so many books. If they don't like the exact mission statement for your book, they're probably just going to take on a different book. But I've gotten to the point around like, I don't know, publisher rejection number 30, where I started being like, maybe I should self-publish.
Yeah.
So there's a whole section of my Google search history of like, how to self-publish? Is self-publish a good idea?
I mean, it's an idea. I think I would go towards that after that many rejections. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to self. But there's so what's the difference between getting a publisher and then also self-publishing? Like, what in that process, what's the difference?
Well, okay, for me, I wanted to go the publishing route for two reasons. One is I really wanted to see how it can be done right and professionally.
Yeah.
and then learn from that and maybe do it myself the next time, right? Like I that's my mental model for learning is like watch a professional do it and then like
Yes.
copy and paste. The other one is I really hope it gets turned into a movie. It's like one of my
That's
bucket
so
list
fun.
items is like write something that turns into a movie.
Okay.
Might not be this book, but like
Yeah.
I felt that going the traditional publisher route was like gave it kind of a better chance of being taken seriously as a movie.
Gotcha. And it makes sense. And also like, I think the feedback is awesome too, right? To be able to share your creative work with publishers and editors, like professionals that do this each and every day, who have seen countless books, right? Compared to maybe yourself or others. Obviously you're probably well read and things like that if you're ready to write a book. But that's also probably a plus, a positive of getting a published book, is just like you're getting input into the story, input into the writing style that might play a role down the road if a book does get picked up.
Yeah. No, and I think feedback is critical to really any creative process, including writing.
Yeah.
And, even outside of my publisher, I recruited a lot of my own beta readers,
Yeah. Gotcha.
mostly friends, but
Yeah.
I actually found like a website online called Critique Circle where
Oh,
you post
nice.
chapters, you read other people's chapters. They have a really smart system where you get credits for reviewing other people's chapters,
Yeah.
and then you need credits to post your own. So it kind of keeps this like healthy economy alive where
Yeah.
you're incentivized to review other people.
It's kind of like a
And
science
so
journal in a way. Like, you write articles and they ask you to review articles, and that's
yeah,
like part of the service. Yeah.
and thankfully no money is required.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know the science journalism space is running into a lot of the expensive paywalls right now, but
Yeah.
I actually think that's a super interesting model of the future, because, as part of this whole Solarpunk idea, I think community and people are such a large part of the problem. Sorry, part of the solution.
Solution. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, community and people are such a large part of the solution. And one of the ways that we do that is we figure out systems that help us align, help us work better together rather than
Yeah.
worse. So these platforms, or I mean, Craigslist is like this weirdly old school but perfect example of like, if you just make a platform where people can buy and sell used items.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows how many like millions of tons of CO2 Craigslist has saved from things being landfilled. It's
Yeah.
incredible.
It's true, because normally people would just throw stuff out, even for like Facebook Marketplaces. People are like, I got this junk, but I can sell it for $50 and just make something off of it, and it gets reused. So it makes sense for reusable stuff. It probably saves a ton of stuff from going into the
Yeah.
yeah. Agreed. Well, that's really interesting. So with this story, what do you hope readers get out of it?
I hope that readers of How to Surf a Hurricane walk away believing that there's hope in the future and feeling excited and empowered to take action themselves and with their community.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. And so, I mean, that's what you want. You want the call to action. So part of the book, is there like will there be like a follow-up with you? You'll probably do some talks and stuff like that, but like, is there like, you want them to feel a call to action? So after the book, I'm reading it and I'm like, oh man, this is awesome. I feel inspired to do something else. How will you, like, is there a way that they can get directed to something? Like, are you going to create something like that, or say, here are a bunch of organizations such as like Surfrider or something like that are going to help you, guide you to do that kind of call to action?
Yeah. So obviously going to keep doing podcasts and spreading the word, but also for listeners of How to Protect the Ocean, I've prepared a special page on the book's website,
Nice.
howtosurfahurricane.com/protect, which will not only give them a free sneak preview of the book, but includes some actions and some ideas on how you can get started yourself helping to protect the ocean.
I love that. What a nice surprise. That's amazing. This is a guy who knows how to sell a book. This is fantastic. I think, but I mean, that's what's important, right? When you write a novel like this, you want people to feel inspired. You want people to take action. Here you're providing people with a methodology, some ideas, some strategies. I think that's fantastic. And I can't wait.
Yeah.
I can't wait to read the book. I can't wait for people to read the book. People are, as you're reading this or as you're listening to this, you're watching this, the pre-orders are up and you can grab the pre-orders. I'm going to put the link in the show notes. Todd, like, as we kind of wrap this up, like, what do you want people to feel after this book? Like, what do you want people to do?
I want people, well, first and foremost, I want people to spend time in nature.
Yes.
That's like the single most important thing you can do is spend time in nature, because it's going to recharge you. It's going to shield you against all the fear and anxiety in the world. And it's going to remind you, this is what I'm fighting for.
Yeah.
And then take that energy and act. There's so many ideas online about how you can act, find something that makes sense for your life and your lifestyle, and build on that action. Join some sort of group or community near you with similar desires and goals to just keep building on that and enabling other people.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's a great message. Todd, I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast, for writing the book. I can't wait to read it. I can't wait for people to read it, and I want to hear what people say. We'll tell people how to get a hold of you. We'll put your links in the show notes so that people can give you their feedback, their inspiration, how they felt about the book. I can't wait for it to come out. You must be super excited.
I am. Thank you so much, Andrew. It's been a pleasure talking with you, and I hope you enjoy the book. HowToSurfAHurricane.com.
Yes, absolutely. Say that again, because I kind of interrupted you. Say that one more time.
HowToSurfAHurricane.com.
Perfect. We'll put that link in the show notes for you guys to get a hold of that, and we'll put it in the comments on the YouTube channel. Again, Todd, thank you so much for writing the book. Thank you so much for coming on and telling us all about it. We can't wait to have you back on and to find out what happened. What happened during this journey of yours. Do you plan, like, I know this, you're still in the first book and still in the editing process and like the release process and stuff like that, but do you plan on writing another one, like a follow-up?
Don't tell anyone, but I have started working on a sequel.
What? That's awesome. Love it. All right. This is going to be good. Can't wait to hear more about that. Thank you very much, Todd, for coming on the podcast. We really appreciate it. Looking forward to having you back on the next time.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, Todd, for joining us on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. What an interview in terms of talking about a book that he just wrote, like pretty much his first time with a publisher. I don't know how you write a book. I've always wanted to write a book, especially with the amount of interviews that I've done and the amount of people that I've met, amazing people that I've met. Maybe one day that'll come. But to write a novel and to just write it every day for like 2 to 3 years, to get rejected so many times, to build that resilience in yourself, just like Todd did, that's inspiration right there. Right? That's an inspiring journey right there, to write a novel. Not an easy thing to do. And then hopefully one day we might see it on the big screen. I think that would be kind of cool to see that. But I think it's important to be able to read this book, to be able to think about climate change in the future, near future, and how we adapt to it, and to see what those results are. I can't wait to read this book. I know you probably can't wait to read this book, so I'm going to put the pre-order link in the show notes. Go get it, buy it, support Todd and his efforts, also support in thinking about climate change in a different way, and support this genre, right? The Solarpunk genre. That's kind of a cool thing to do. Punk has always been rebellious. This thought process is a bit rebellious because it's not normally done, and he's challenging you to think in a different way, and I just love the fact that he's doing that. So thank you again, Todd. And I want to thank you who's listening to this podcast, who's watching this on YouTube. I want to thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. If you want to get a hold of me, you can do so by going to Instagram, DMing me at How to Protect the Ocean, or you can go on our YouTube channel, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the future episodes. I want to thank you for joining us on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin, from the True North Strong and Free. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.